Welcome in, everyone, to this IT Leadership Lab live stream. I think we have a really good one today. I think we have a topic that a lot of people are going to be interested in discussing because um, we have these kind of small groups in the IT Leadership Lab, and a lot of people always want to know how to handle AI and how to set up an AI policy so that your users do not take advantage of AI, they don't put sensitive information into AI. And of course, the easiest thing would be to just shut it all off. But unfortunately, that's not really going to work because people will find a way to use it. So, this is going to be a really interesting conversation, I think. But if you are joining us for the first time, welcome in. This community is kind of built for IT leaders, and it is for IT leaders to connect with each other, share their own resources, share content, their experiences, things like that. And it's a place for you to build community and learn from people that have actually done what you are doing now. And it's a place for you to share your experiences as well. So we also host bi-monthly webinars, such as this one, and we discuss various IT leadership topics ranging from hiring to more technical based discussions like automations or AI, things like that. And then we bring on real IT leaders to share their expertise. And so, yeah, that's what we're here today to discuss. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to our speakers. I'm sure a lot of y'all are familiar with them, but if we have any new folks in here, Tim, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your journey in IT and what you've been doing here in the lab?
Of course. Well, it's good to see everyone again on another webinar. I have lost track of how many I've been on, but I will take that as a good sign. It is always an honor and a privilege. Just means that, hey, if what I'm doing is working for me, maybe it'll work for somebody else, or you can at least point and laugh if it doesn't work. Um, but I'm the vice president of IT for a nonprofit. I want to say small nonprofit, but we're really not anymore. In about 4 weeks, we'll be onboarding about 400 people. So I have a great team that's handling all that growth and privileged to lead them. But that's kind of the culmination of where my career has gone to this point. Started as level one help desk and worked my way up. Um, yeah, been in this role for over 3 years now. Had a blast doing it. Learned a lot. Learned what to do, what not to do, which are as important in equal measure. Um, and also, I looked at the leaderboard in the IT Leadership Lab just now and realized that Clark has bypassed me for number one all time, and now I'm mad. Thanks, Clark.
Yeah. Well, hey, Clark, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as the newest top of the leaderboard?
Yeah. Just giving you some competition there, Tim. Yeah, I'm Clark Sandlin. I'm the president and CEO of Zerka. We're an IT managed service provider for private equity, hedge funds, and family offices. That's our specialty. High net worth individuals is who we handle. Most of our clients are fairly small in size, but large in pocketbooks. So they're a good client to work with. I've been doing this for ever, and my company's 21 years old this year, and I've been in IT since I was a kid, working with my mom gave me a Commodore 64 when I was like 12, and I've just been in IT ever since. It's in my blood. My dad worked for NASA and Honeywell, and my sister has her own IT company as well. It's just in our blood. So this is all I do, and I still love doing it even at this old age.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, Clark, really appreciate you being here. And yeah, you've honestly kind of been a huge contributor to the lab lately, and we really appreciate everything that you've shared in there. So thank you for all that you do.
Yeah, you're welcome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And then Kelly, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Sure. I'm Kelly Schrager. I'm the Director of IT for Colorado Early Colleges. We're a network of K-12 public charters in the state of Colorado, gathered from the name. One of the things that makes us a little bit different from a lot of the other schools is that we're concurrent enrollment. So it means that our kids, to graduate, they have to have either an associate's degree, 60 college credits, or a industry certification. So we have kids graduate halfway done with college for effectively no cost. So it's a pretty interesting space to be in. This is my first experience in K-12, and it's definitely different than government or enterprise, or it's a wildly different environment. It's fun. There's a lot of variation. Yeah, that's the best positive way to put it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, working in schools is a challenge in itself, and I think also probably of a unique experience to this topic specifically as well, where you have not only adult end users, but you also have kids that are probably using AI, and it's I'm sure there's a lot to manage there. So, well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. So I wanted to jump into today's discussion talking a little bit about planning for AI. Before we even get to the user-facing side, what are some of the primary goals for implementing AI within y'all's organizations, at least from an IT side?
So for us, it's interesting. We're really into trying to just refine what processes we can and do a lot of automation. Um, I had a big wish list item given to me by our program staff, all our caseworkers, that said, I want to open up my laptop and just record the interviews we're having with foster parents, because we do a lot of foster care work. And so, being able to have that interview and then AI is listening and transcribing it and putting it into our case management system would save me a lot of time. Yeah, I get that. And as we're going to talk about later, some of my answers are really going to tie around, the albatross that is HIPAA. Yeah, you can't really do that. Plus, the state agency that we work with said you can't do that. So, yeah, really shifting, from the like pie in the sky stuff to, okay, what can we do agentically, right? And really what I'm interested in, and again, this could be a main theme in everything I talk about, what's going to last once the boom is over, right? Because I'm not saying there's a bubble and like everything AI is going to go away. I think the bubble is more that a lot of the heavy investment's going to go away. What's going to stick? What benefits can you actually derive out of this thing long term? I think that's the way everybody kind of needs to start shifting their thinking. At least that's what we're doing here. So to answer the question, what things can we do with agentic AI that are not going to cost a ton, especially as AI companies start to figure out their business models long term? What's going to be the best thing to go there?
Yeah, so I totally agree with him on all that he said. But as far as goals go, I think most of my goals have been co-opted by every cloud service and third-party app. I mean, everything includes AI in it. They're constantly, Windows 11 just pushed out Copilot to everybody in the world, and you've got Adobe, you've got, every single application has some sort of AI built in it. And it's created so many problems for all of us IT people, because now we're behind the eight ball trying to get everything kind of reeled in, and everybody's just kind of run amok with it. And I think that was intentional design, but most the goals of our clients are, I mean, they haven't really thought about all the data leaks and things like that. We've been pointing that out, but their goals are, they don't really know what they want to do with it either. And I think, like Tim said, I think once the hype settles down, we're going to, realize what it actually can do.
One of my biggest goals. Well, let me ask first: is my audio better?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Perfect.
Good to hear. Um, one of my biggest goals is clarity. I mean, everybody's wondering what should I and what shouldn't I do with AI, and I think the thing that I've figured out with LinkedIn, especially, is that there's a lot of noise around the top end. But they're actually the outliers. The people who are posting on LinkedIn about what they're doing and how they should use it, um, are the first movers, the early adopters, and the majority of people are just trying to figure out what is this good for, beyond asking yet another thing, whether or not cats can eat waffles. What are the, there's more questions than answers for most people, about how it works in their day-to-day lives. And I think there's a huge opportunity there, and there's also a huge opportunity to miss and not provide clarity and just go back to the department of no. And that's kind of the balance that I'm trying to find internally, is how do we deliver good IT support for good platforms in the most solidly shadow IT environment that I've ever experienced in my professional career.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty rough. Because there's probably a lot of usage that you just also don't see and you don't know if you'll ever see. Um, so when it comes to developing an AI policy, as far as making sure it's not being used um, kind of in those inappropriate ways, who do you, and this might be a great question for Tim because you're working through this and you've already worked through it. Who do you work with to actually create that AI policy? Because it's not just going to be an IT thing. There are a lot of different regulations, a lot of different places that will need to have a hand in this. So, who are those teams that you would work with to even get that process started?
So we're a nonprofit, so the structure is a little different than probably your average run-of-the-mill company. But we have a legal team that's not like a lawyer on retainer. We actually do have legal counsel that works directly for us, which is really nice, because I can go ask her questions whenever I want, and I don't have to charge the company several $1,000s just to do so. So yay! She was the biggest help in crafting our AI policy, because we set out what we wanted, and we knew that this was going to be kind of quasi negotiation as we worked with these different departments. And I'll give you in order by usefulness, if you will. Finance, if you're listening, I love you, but sorry, you just pay for it. So we went to legal and we said, here's what we want to do. And we put verbiage in there. If you use AI and you put it into whatever you put into AI, we're going to treat it as if it's you. That's an important distinction, and I would definitely encourage that if you can sneak it into your policies. Because if somebody puts in, it is definitively stated according to ChatGPT that cats love waffles, like if you put that into a legal thing, right, somebody could objection, we don't know that, right, then it goes on you as the person that manipulated AI to get that prompt and everything. So that's a number one. And legal was really a ditto on that, which was awesome. But they also said, you can go a step further. We can sanction employees for this. I was like, oh, cool. Okay. I didn't know I could do that. This sounds fun and powerful, and I hope I never have to use this. So yeah, legal was a big help there. And then our contracting folks, we do a lot with state contracts. And so being able to have them look from a more compliance to contracts and things with that brain that they have, it was incredible because they were able to nitpick like all the BAAs and everything that these different AI companies, if they even offer a BAA, what does it say? I didn't have to go read a bunch of contracts. Definitely didn't have to feed it to AI to read all the contracts. That seems a little self-defeating, but definitely our contract team was awesome. And then we have a whole data team that was really able to say, okay, here's how these manipulate our data. Here's what integrations we would need. And that was really in consult with us. We kind of know that. But again, weird mix because we're a nonprofit that does a lot of state data crunching. So your mileage may vary. I would definitely advise if you have legal counsel or a legal team or anybody that's even legally minded, get their eyes on it. Get your compliance team on it, your operations team. Those perspectives that you may not think of are the ones that matter. The other one that really mattered was our programmatic folks, because they're the ones that are having to use it. They're the big ones. And so getting key stakeholders there was huge. I'm just telling you, I know because it was in my brain. This is an AI, like AI is an IT thing. So like I can make the policy myself and then just here you go. And my impulse is to say, shut it all down. It's Skynet. Go, unplug it. Getting that outside perspective really helped me see that there is potential for these tools as long as they are used responsibly. And if you come at it with that mindset, everyone's going to be happier. You don't have to be the boogeyman saying, no, you can't use that. But also you do get to point and say, but if you do this wrong, you're liable for it and the company's liable for it. So I'm going to stop being on the soapbox now. Broaden your horizons on this topic. Get some outside perspective from just IT.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great point.
So as far as so there's a documented policy and then there's policy enforcement. So for us, what we use NIST as our guideline, and it's very easy to not have to reinvent the wheel. So I just download their documents all the time and piecemeal an official policy for our clients out of that. So a lot of it's not useful to us or our clients, but it does have a lot of useful things in it. So I'm going to just post that in the chat as well. So that's the NIST document, the current one for AI policy. So then once you determine with your clients, like what is your policy going to be? And Marcus mentioned in chat that, how do you enforce this against third-party vendors or, like Adobe and Windows? There's ways around this stuff. It's painful. You can remove Copilot from Windows 11. It's arduous. It's a very difficult process. Same with Adobe. You can opt out of these things, but you have, it requires a lot of maintenance in the back end. So, once you have your policy in place, what we use Microsoft Purview in tandem with Defender. We also use Proofpoint DLP to enforce these policies. So what it does is it enforces if the policy is no PII, no HIPAA information, no data leaks into public AIs or chatbots or whatever. We can contain that with those products. So that's kind of how we handle it. Yeah, we're less documentation heavy and more enforcement heavy.
I think the reality that we're all, I mean, probably everybody in this live stream is grappling with is that there is no prevention. There everything is as good as possible. We're managing risk profiles and doing our best to make sure that it works, but preventing somebody from pulling out their smartphone and taking a picture of something and using ChatGPT to analyze it is, you can't even prevent that unless you're in a really controlled, like, secret environment. And that's why I'm working on policy as clarity, but I'm also working on the other half, which is here is the tool, here is the way in which you engage with AI, because when people don't have that clarity on what they should be doing, they make it up as they go, and AI is the worst. with this because it's everywhere, you know. There's no getting away from it. You know, I have people, because I'm in education, I've got a lot of students that are saying, well, I've heard about all these impacts of AI. I don't ever want to use it. Well, you know, you're using it today when you use Google. When you search in any of the search engines, it is being, even if it's not presented as blatantly as Google does, it's still an AI result. There's it's ubiquitous. There's no getting away from it. And the only way I think to be successful in the environment that we're in today, where we're in the Wild West and there's not a lot of regulatory frameworks around this, is to channel people and really, you know, here's the tool. This is the best way. Here's how we solve that problem. Um, but everybody's used it and everybody has their own opinions. You know, right now we're a Microsoft 365 environment. Most schools are Google, and so we're getting a lot of people agitating for Gemini. You know, oh, I want to use Notebook LM. I've heard amazing things about it. Why are we not using Google instead of Microsoft? And it's fun. No, it's not fun actually. It's really frustrating most days.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like you mentioned in the lab that you had started working on some sort of AI policy within your organization. What are the teams that you've worked with um, in education? I know it's going to be a little bit different. Um, so, who have you worked with to try to put together that AI policy, and how does that affect your end users, including the students?
So far, it's been everyone in the org except for students. So it's faculty, staff, admin, HR. Um, Unfortunately, unlike Tim, we don't have in-house legal, so we're gonna have to probably farm that out externally once we have something in place. But my goal was to get as many of the stakeholders across the organization involved. Um, that's also complicated too because you know we have a teacher who does adjunct work at one of the local community colleges, and she's already using it in her classroom. And then I have another teacher who believes that AI is the bane of humanity, and we should turn back time and reverse all use of AI across society, much less implement it in our environment. So balancing these uh, these competing perspectives has been it's it's been a lot.
If I can if I can jump in real quick, I think what we're seeing is this need for IT to be kind of the educators here. Um, you know, I have people in my organization that are going and researching these things on their own, and so that automatically means that I have to be equipped to kind of agree or disagree, or provide kind of the truth there. That's what I'm interested in, right? Not my opinion. I'm interested in what's the truth of the matter. Um, but I think if you're positioning yourself and you're educating yourself and you're educating your team, if you're not a solo shop, right, you have people working for you, that's a force multiplier right there. But what I want to express with that education, what's really worked for me in kind of trying to get people to see my point of view, I don't necessarily even need them to agree. I just need them to see it. I would love it if people agreed with me all the time. But what's really helped is putting it through the same old tried and true way I look at everything, and that is risk, percentage of risk. What are you trying? What are you mitigating? Right? If you're using AI, you're accepting some amount of risk. What amount of risk is that to you? And what are you risking? Okay, so then you're doing a kind of a cost benefit analysis there in your head. And when you start looking at things like that, you say, oh, well, AI is great for X, Y, and Z, but if I'm selling A, B, and C to get it, we need to kind of pull it down a little bit, or, whatever your calculus is, right? As long as you're thinking through the eyes of what risks are you taking on. Like, and you should do this with any decision, by the way. This isn't just like a corporate thing. Like, just in general, you should live your life as like, if I go to the park today, what risk am I accepting that I'm going to get hit by a car or struck by lightning? Like, okay, great. Am I still going to do it? You can't live your life in fear. But anyway, just passing every decision through risk is really going to help you. And that's been really persuasive with my users, because as soon as they see, oh yeah, no, Tim's thought of this already, then they're good. So
Yeah, those are all really good points. I wanted to bring up a question that Marcus had asked a little while ago that I think y'all had answered in the chat, but kind of wanted to bring it to the actual live stream as well. If your policy states that AI needs to be approved, but vendors just add it without permission to existing software, how do you deal with this? And I think this is something that might have been brought up in our conversations, especially with Microsoft and Copilot and things like that. Do y'all have any advice on how to deal with things like that?
So there's ways to opt out of a lot of this, especially with Windows 11, which we've already remediated for most of our clients. It's painful to remove it. You basically have to create an image and decopilot everything. There's Adobe has a way to do that as well. But the problem is the same as with mobile devices. Like anytime you make security settings or changes on it, the next update will push it right back out and reset the settings right back. So you have to kind of have a template in place that you keep continually pushing back out and fighting with them. And of course, they make modifications, so you have to modify your template. That's the real challenge. But the problem is, then you get to mobile device management, and you really, some you have control over, but some you don't. Most people don't opt in because they pay. This is my phone. I pay for it, and I'm going to do whatever I want with it. And because companies don't want to pay for cell phones, then guess what? They've opened up their entire environment to this risk. And like Tim was saying earlier, I approach it from a risk perspective, and most of my PE clients go, "Oh yeah, I didn't think about that." Right? All these data leaks, and the famous law firm example from last year, who leaked their strategy prior to court, and they were defeated because of that. Same thing with private equity. Any kind of mergers and acquisitions deals they're looking at purchasing companies, that can be leaked out as well. And the competitor may have more insight based on those leaks. And I get that a lot of this is like, you can segment this and make it private if you subscribe. But a lot of these people are not subscribing and doing the security and privacy controls. And you just have to educate them to the dangers. And it doesn't help that the law was passed last year that states can't make laws against AI, right? So that kind of handcuffs us even more. There's no legislation behind this. There's no protection. So we're kind of early. Tim, and I've talked about it a lot. We're a little early to the game by ringing the bells, the alarm bells, and saying, listen, this is a huge data leak. This is a risk. You guys got to be aware of where your data is going. It's just like Google was in the 90s, and they're collecting data on you. So
I was listening to a podcast actually just before this one, and they were talking about agentic AI. And one of the guys, he's a developer in the space, and he said you have to treat all agents, even the ones you've built, as if they were adversarial. That's wow. I don't. I mean, that's such a brain shift for me, because you think of you've got trusted and untrusted. Even in a zero trust environment, there's actually still trust. And but to go to that extreme where I've built a thing to support the business, but I have to treat it as though it can be weaponized at any moment against my organization is kind of messes with me a little bit there.
No, I completely agreed. I wanted to pivot to Gary's
Yes, yeah,
Gary's
that's that.
question.
Thank you for doing my
Um,
job for me. I'll just
you're welcome. You're
I'll take
welcome.
back here.
You're welcome. Can you give me enough points in the leadership lab so I overtake Clark again? I'm kidding. Don't do that. This is gonna be our Cold War. So definitely going to echo, not shamelessly, what people are saying. Keep it simple. Keep a policy. So the question is, if you're a small company, what's a good baseline AI policy? If you're not necessarily working with sensitive data, I mean, if you're working with PII like we are, just go look at HIPAA, right? And Clark already kind of gave you a good blueprint in the NIST AI policies. Take from that what is necessary. Don't go too heavy-handed in this, because you don't want to just be that guy that's saying no, because they're just going to disregard you and do it anyway. Come alongside, figure out what your business objectives are with it, right? And that means sitting down with people and saying, what are you wanting to use AI for? Okay, how can we solve that? How can we do that responsibly? I think building policy that reinforces that is better. Yes, but what everyone said in the comments, Kelly said, don't put anything into a public LLM. Our state entity sent an email out to all of the different vendors like us that do community-based care contracts and said, one of you, we're not going to say who, one of you put your data into Originality AI and it showed up on a dark web report. Fortunately for you, it was none of our data or else. So message received there, right? I reiterated that to all of our users. Just like I said, I think a big thing would be what we got our legal to approve of. Anything that is put into AI is treated as if it was the person who prompted AI to generate that information. So if it's incorrect, that's like you putting incorrect information into an email. And then if you hit people with that policy, right, I think that's going to kind of mentally check a lot of people that are trying to do the crazy, but you can still do the cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, if you're personally held responsible for certain things, that's definitely that would get me to do that would get me to follow the rules if I'm now personally responsible for something that happens. So
Yeah, I want to add something to Gary's question. I mean, what's the best baseline policy? Like, if you're on Office 365, Purview is the absolute best. They have so many templates. You can just pick one that's, best fits your organization. You can also like remove some of the enforcement pieces, just pick and choose. Then print out your policy. It creates your policy for you, submit it. If you're working for construction, it's much like oil and gas, which we have a lot of oil and gas clients. Same deal. Nobody's going to read a policy. If they're out in the field and doing the work, they're just not. So it's going to have to be an enforcement. So you're going to have to get management to agree to the policy and then enforce it. And Microsoft has a way to containerize everything on the phone such that it can't get back to the network, and you do that through Intune. So you have Intune policies that don't allow chat bots or ChatGPT or any type of AI solution in. You only have approved apps, and you're enforcing your policy that way. I think that's the best way I've found so far that works really well for smaller organizations.
yeah, that's great, and especially if they already have 365 like that, that definitely. I think that's something that we talked about in a past stream is, if you're looking at adding new tools to your tech stack, you should look at existing tools that you already have too to see if they fit what you need. Gary also asked about AI meeting minutes tools like Otter, Fireflies, etc. The information itself is business related, but are primarily utilized for internal communications. Would you view this as a clear breach of what we share with these tools? So I'm not sure if you guys have any experience with those.
I have banned every single one of them. You can do that the second. I mean, there is an element that you cannot control here. And so let me just share with you. I ran into the transcription thing before I ran into, ChatGPT and all these things. This was plaguing me a year ago. So started getting some admin consent requests in Microsoft if you're using all that system. I love and hate it. Got some for Otter, got some for Read AI. Looked into them, realized what they were, shut it down. I said, decline. No, you don't actually ever get to be approved. I don't have to go hit whack-a-mole. I just blocked them. Went and found a list of all of them, went ahead and preemptively did all that. Instructed my team, if you see anything like this that says transcription service, if you Google it and says transcription, decline it. The only one that we're approving and we're sanctioning for this purpose is Copilot. And that's because it's gated behind a license that we hand out. We turned off the self-service Copilot ability. We don't want people buying licenses for themselves, which is a really scummy thing, Microsoft. Thanks for doing that. So turning that off, and you can find ways to do all this. We just had to do it in the moment. So anyway, banned these. Then we wrote a policy, as you do. And the transcription policy is simply that if it is information that would be okay to be in a public records request, you can go ahead and transcribe that conversation, because we get dragged into lawsuits all the time because of our work with the state. We get subpoenaed. If you're talking about internal budget plans and you're transcribing that and that transcript is sitting there, theoretically it's going to be retained in an e-discovery request. So keep that in mind. And again, the education aspect was important because we were able to establish clear guidelines of, if this is a general informative purpose, sure, go nuts, don't care, sure, why not? The second it crosses into talking about specific PII, the second it starts talking about company confidential information, turn off the transcription. Turn off the recording too, if you want. Like the recording, we have a little bit more leeway. I'm a little leery of it, but shut off the transcript, and then you can turn that thing back on the second you start saying goodbye. Whatever. That's our policy. That's how we handled that. I definitely don't encourage any other transcription tools. We blocked it as best as we can for our users to not use them. And we've actually instructed our folks, if they're in a meeting externally and they see somebody wander in with anything like that, they get to be the ones to say stop. And we could say, oh, our IT policy says we can't be in a meeting with these things. And then at least you've done everything you can. So that's what we've done.
Yeah, I mean, I think that touches on what Patrick said. He's a loophole on translation services. Our company doesn't allow it, so we have the vendor host the meeting and use theirs. Problem solved. So, yeah, I mean, that sounds like something that is would have to be included in a policy, an AI policy that you make everybody sign, and then if a vendor does use those services, then you have to say we can't actually use those. It's against our policy. So yeah, unfortunately some things you just can't control, and it's about mitigation. So that is
Something. Sorry to interrupt you, Brittany.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Something that also plays into this that might not be immediately obvious is your retention policies. Because yeah, we're also subject to public records requests as a K-12 public K-12, and so we've decided to turn off all transcription, including internal tools, for that reason, because right now our retention policy is based on existing legal requirements that don't encompass the idea of every conversation being written down verbatim and searchable by somebody submitting a request. And so we're looking at what we do with our retention policy and establishing that and publishing it, instead of just having it be something that we set in Purview, and having it be a public thing, so that we can say, hey, we retain meeting transcriptions for a week. and then that lowers going back to what Tim said earlier about risk, that lowers our risk profile for public records and having issues with that, because it's publicly published, and people should know in the upfront, our meeting records, you got to get that request in within a week of the meeting happening for it to be even available.
Yeah, and some of the problems, so like litigation is always lagging, technology, of course. And like you mentioned, on these transcriptions, as being discoverable and all, sometimes I don't know about if you guys have experienced this, but the transcriptions are not always perfect. Sometimes they insert words that weren't spoken. They insert concepts that weren't said. Um, it's not the greatest notes. At least it gives you kind of an outline. But can you imagine if there was a crafty lawyer who came up with, oh no, you said this, and you're coming back, so no, that's not what we said. That's what the AI translated, and what a mess that's going to create.
Yeah, yeah. I was putting into chat, but I love telling the stories. I once put a transcript into AI to have it like give me some quotes, and it pulled the most amazing quotes, and I was like, "Wow, this is really good." And I went back to the video, and because it gave me timestamps, and wouldn't you know, it made up every single quote. None of the quotes existed, and it's like, how much of this stuff are people just like taking at face value and just saying,
Yeah.
"That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's correct." And how much trouble is that, that causing? So yeah, it's tough.
Somebody did a murder suicide thing recently because of their chat bot that they were having a conversation with. This was just a couple of days ago. Crazy.
And
now
is,
they're doing chat GPT, of course, but
yeah, it's wild what like you said, the laws are lagging behind the actual technology. So
no.
So when it comes to integrating a new piece of software that is AI or at least has an AI component, and it is a necessary tool, it seems like it would be helpful. What are some processes for approving those new tools, and who needs to kind of review those?
Tell you what we did. Because really the question was for us was, okay, we know we want to use, like an AI tool. I think this question can kind of fall back on old standards, if you will, because it's just like any other tool. It's just a new technology. Same thing with like cloud providers. Back in the day, oh man, back in the day, never mind. New gray hair just sprouted. You know, I ask that if anybody, I tell everybody that I can do all the research in the world on every single thing and be about this deep into the research. But if everybody in the company is researching ways to make their jobs better and we all just kind of collaborate on that, wow, how much more robust of a conclusion can we come to? But, and then everyone's like, yeah, but whatever suggestions you have, come to IT and we help you. We look at it from the security perspective, the risk perspective, the liability perspective. We do all those things. And then we say, hey, this is an awesome tool. I wish they wouldn't immediately sell it all to a foreign government. Great. Okay, we can't use that thing. So I empower my people to research new things, but they know that they have to bring it to IT so we can make sure that it's secure. And not so I can say, no, I'm not interested in being the boogeyman with the ban hammer, but how do we solve the problem in a cost efficient, data efficient, security efficient way? That's how we do that. And we get some assists from our legal team and everything that we have too. Finance is a great, boogeyman too. If it's one of those things like, yeah, this tool's awesome and it checks all the boxes, but it's $1,800 a user a month. Do we have the budget for that? No. Sorry. So you just, in the multitude of counselors, there is wisdom. That's something I live my life by, and it's really applicable here too. You get counsel from everybody. It helps you make a good decision.
think on the flip side, you know, I get bombarded. There's so many ed tech tools that are promising to make teachers' lives better, solve all their problems, and most of them don't. And so it's a struggle. I don't know that there's any good answer to any of it. I I I lean on the same levers that Tim just described. Um, but the reality is that people don't care about those things. They don't care about. I mean, the average person, they want their life to be better. They don't necessarily care about business risk or compliance or spending somebody else's money. And so sometimes it just comes down to actually having to be the no. Um, and it's unfun and it doesn't make any friends. But the other thing that I lean on at least as heavily as the other things is regulatory compliance. We have HIPAA data, we have data that falls under FERPA, and we have kids under the age of 13, so we're also subject to COPA and all kinds of many acronyms. I mean, every industry has it. Those are also good places to run to when you need to slow things down, shape the discussion, create consensus in a way that's good for the business and lowers that risk profile without just being a wall.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think what Tim said, always approach the finance aspect of it, right? So it's not just how much it costs, but it's also litigation costs in the future, like potentially, what would this lead to? And you know, costs are always for me, uh, because most of us report to the CFOs or someone financial, right, in our chain, and that's the easy way to get them on your side and just say, look, this is going to cost this much, or here's the risks and the litigation risk, and give them the examples of all the data leaks that have happened. And 9 times out of 10, I get people to say, no, we got to stop this, we got to enforce this, because these lawsuits are just could potentially kill us.
Yeah. So as far as this kind of touches on the topic that we're talking about in next week's stream, which is end user cybersecurity training. What are some ways that you ensure responsible AI usage with your employees, with all of the employees in the organization? Because a lot of it is end user training. So how are you ensuring that this goes past just policy and telling them what they can and can't do with AI, and kind of helping them learn what is safe and what is not safe when it comes to AI usage?
For us, I'll start. We do lunch and learns, and just webinars, and just say, I focus again, on the financial aspects and the cybersecurity aspects of the data leaks and things like that. It makes it more exciting than just saying no, right? Like, come to an hour-long session of no. So it's when you make it exciting, and you talk about things, and we add a lot of personal stuff into it too, like what like the murder suicide thing happened, the psychological aspects of it, the how it's affecting children. If you add that little tidbit in there, it makes it, everybody wants to come and have part of that conversation. So you'd be surprised how exciting those kind of lunch and learns and webinars are. And you just have to do that more often, and just say, hey, I'm get a departmental budget, buy-in lunch, and everybody wants a free lunch, right? So they'll show up. And I think it stimulates a lot of really good conversation, and it when everybody leaves, they're very mindful and thoughtful, much more so, because we don't hear a lot of this stuff in the mainstream media about these risks and these litigious risks and data loss risks. So I think the best part is education. I think that's just the best way to approach it.
Oh, the big thing for us, right? I'm with Patrick on training. Just call out the CEO. That's yes. Um, I'm gonna ditto what Clark said. I mean, it literally you cannot afford. I know. Again, I mentioned it before. We are IT people are inclined to say no to the shiny effect. We are the counter. You know, you activated my trap card. Um, we are. It's ingrained in us. But then on the other hand, there's also those of us that want to go full into every cutting edge technology. So it's a weird dichotomy. I find myself more in the no camp, but I'm working to become kind of the middle road that I think there needs to be of, well, look, I'm not saying no, I'm saying we have to do this responsibly because again, we have to manage risk here. And so my education comes across as I stop people at the, in a meeting, as I've done this with some of our departments. I've just had a AI let's hash out session. Here, I've booked 90 minutes on your calendar. Let's just hash out AI with finance. Bring me what you're doing, and I'll tell you if we can continue doing that or not. That was really a useful tool for me to kind of get a handle on AI because it kind of just blew up underneath me, and I figured it all out. And it really came across like this. It came across, hey, I don't care right now whether you think AI is the worst thing since sliced bread or the best thing since sliced bread. I don't care. The question we're trying to solve is where AI crosses over into the corporate, into our business. That is what we need to solve. How does it affect your business? I don't care if you're off talking to ChatGPT and hallucinating a grand new life and maybe cheating on your spouse. Whatever, you do you, man. Like that's you. The second we cross over into the corporate world, that's where my responsibility begins. Let's solve that problem. Okay, what does it mean corporately? Well, we have all our requirements that we're held to, whatever your organizational requirements are, and I encourage you to look them up. We were talking about the example of a construction company. I'm sure there's some regulations that you can go point to that's saying in the spirit of, even if it's something like OSHA, right? Like, okay, well, safety's a big deal. How do we stay safe with these tools? Like, I don't know, that gets a little corny, but you know what I mean? Find your requirements, go from there. But take it in the spirit of, look, I want to help you use this responsibly with what matters for the business, what's actually solving a business use case. No, we don't need the biggest Sora subscription you can get because you truly don't need to generate that much Sora data. You really don't, actually, when it comes down to it, because we talked about it. Remember, this isn't just Tim's feelings on the matter. We came to this agreement ourselves. So anyway, that is what I would say, and that's how we've come across with that.
There's no real other option for us other than education. I mean, I've got 12-year-olds in hallways taking pictures of their math homework and asking ChatGPT to tell them how to solve the problems. We can't control the endpoints, and so getting people on board, involved, understanding the risks, understanding the impacts is really our only option. And yeah, it has to be all of us pulling together and not just, that hard, you can't do that. I mean, I personally, because of organizational objectives, we have all AI blocked for all students. I don't like it because it just means they're working around it. So they're putting whatever they want on their phones or personal devices, and I would much rather say this is the tool, and then we create controls around it. Again, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but this is my point of frustration, is that got to move fast to keep up with all the people who are doing all the things, but also have to move slowly and deliberately enough so that we don't get out over our skis and create huge problems. I don't have an answer to either of those things. It's just kind of, I think everybody is figuring it out. And I think that's where a lot of these conversations I think are helpful, because then it puts it into perspective that we all are in a similar place. That I mean, I feel really behind, and then I have conversations with real people and not just influencers, and I realize, oh, I'm actually not behind. Um, you know, we're okay. We're gonna make it, and also I'd like to move a little bit faster.
Yeah, you know, I just thought of this too. Like Patrick and chat nailed it at the very beginning of this, right? What's the definition of AI versus automation? You know, most of these things are actually automation, and people are just calling it AI. I mean, are you actually hitting an LLM, or are you, hitting a script somewhere? I think that also helps with the education aspect. When the CEO comes and approaches you and says, "Hey, we need some of this AI stuff," and you're like, "Well, what are you trying to accomplish?" And most of the things they're trying to they actually describe are automation. It's just scripting. It's not, you're not attaching to an LLM and having it, scour your data and your invoices and read through all of the data on your network. They're actually wanting to automate positions, which is, it's very helpful to get rid of the minutia, the boring stuff that if people do it by rote, they forget a step. If you can automate something, man, that's the greatest thing. It's not as sexy as sounding as AI, but man, that's where it's at, in my opinion.
Well, but keep in mind there that you're still performing the education function even there.
Yeah.
You're taking the business use case requirements that someone has given you. I want to, use agentic AI. Okay, well, congratulations. I mean, that's a lot of automation. That's where, like, the Venn diagram is basically a circle. It's just using a little more autonomous behavior. Sure, great. But that's a useful development, right?
Yeah.
Again, I mentioned Sora spending $1,500 a month. Like, okay, that's really. But yeah, it is automation. So you have to educate on the difference there, because otherwise people are just going to fall into the marketing trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that also Adam put it really well in chat. It's the, you won't always have a calculator, or the internet won't always be available of the modern generation, which is very, very true. AI is here to stay, no matter how much kicking and screaming we'd like to do. So we need to find ways to work with it and educate people on the tool itself. I think it's.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the book, Between You and AI, is really good, and it uses that example in that book. I don't think any of us are saying, "Hey, this is going to go away, and this is not the future." But I don't want to answer for everybody else on here, but I think it's more like, yes, it is like the internet. The internet wasn't going to go away, but the internet got out of control, right? Like, now you see people playing catch up right now, trying to control the internet, because there's pornographic sites, there's dark web, there's really dark stuff out there. And you don't want your kids going to it. And you don't want, people surfing this at work. You have to, create a safe environment for people, so that, you don't have hate speech and all this other stuff in the workplace. I'm all about free speech, don't get me wrong. But, these tools, they just have so many tentacles, and, the litigation always lags, just like it did with the internet. I mean, we're still playing catch up in litigation with the internet, and we're going to still be doing the same thing in the future. But you've got this 1% of these companies, Microsoft, Oracle, Google, ChatGPT, they're all collecting data, and what they do with this data, it's our data. And I think that's where the litigation is definitely lagging. So I don't think we're saying this is going to go away. This is nothing. It's not useful. It's just we need to figure out where it is useful, and we need to protect it from a cybersecurity aspect.
Yeah, no, I think that's super important. For every 10 good things AI does, there are 1,000 hacker exploits being developed with good IT AI tools not keeping pace. Yeah, absolutely. I miss the old internet. These new memes are confusing. I get it. And what's a meme now? Is any funny thing a meme now? I don't know. Well, thank y'all for joining today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for everybody in the chat that joined today. Really, really glad to have you on for this really important discussion. And yeah, I think it was really, really informative. I've linked a few different things, but I'll make sure that in our recap, I'll also include all of the links to the different templates and everything that was mentioned here today. And then we'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll actually have someone on from the Ninja One team to discuss end user cybersecurity training. So as one of those end users that is that is prone to click on things, I do my best not to, but we're going to have somebody on from Ninja that's actually going to walk through what we do as far as training users on cybersecurity. So yeah, we'll see y'all in a couple of weeks, but in the meantime, take care, and thank y'all again for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.